How to play against turn probes. Next video here, we're going to cover on how to play synchronous pots in position. This is one of the most difficult lines to play as the button, okay? So we need to nail down here how to continue against those probes. So my main concern here with you guys is give you a blueprint on what are the calling thresholds, because I know that one of the biggest mistakes you guys make relative to solver, relative to balanced, is to overfold by a huge margin in the situation. So I want to show you guys some hand class heuristics for how often you need to continue with certain hands to show you how wide you need to continue against different bet sizes. Okay, so let's start here, and I have already filtered for the spot where the out of position player bats the turn. So flop goes check check, and then the out of position player bats the turn. I filtered initially for the small bet size, and then we're going to see other bet sizes as we go. Okay, so against the small bet size, take a look at what happens. You're only supposed to fold 21% of the time as the button, as the imposition player, and you should raise about 10% of the time. Okay, so only 21% fold, guys. If we take a look at the composition of this calling range, you're going to see that it contains quite a lot of weak hands, hands that you perhaps don't even think of calling at this point in time. Okay, so for example, I'm going to start shocking you a little bit here, but it is necessary because solver calls sometimes, for example, with 10-7 of clubs here. So queen 4-4, turn comes a 4, villain probes for a small size, solver calls 10 high here sometimes. Take a look at this one. King 7-4-4, solver probes out of position with a small size, you call 9 high in the spot. King high on a fortress straight. There's one that I saw before that I want to show you, is a Jack 10. This one, take a look at this one. Jack 10 of hearts, the option player bets, you should call Jack 10 of hearts here. And then you could be like, oh, Salo, but this is like a super low frequency play. Take a look at this. King 7-4, deuce of diamonds. Villain bet small. Take a look at Jack 10 of hearts. 46% call. Jack 10 of clubs, 46% call. Take a look at Jack 10 off. If you have hearts and clubs, you call like almost half of the time. Okay, so really significant here, the fact that you should be calling a decent amount of these, well, basically air hands. You need to call some air here on the turn against the small bet, okay? We saw a 10-8. Let's see that 10-8 of hearts. So a6 for deuce, the guy bets small. You have to call a little bit with the 10-8 of hearts. Let's see this one. a6 for deuce. a6 for deuce of hearts. Guy bets small. Take a look at that. 40% call. 40% call with the 10-8 of hearts. 40% call with the 10-8 of clubs. Okay, take a look at the Jack 8. 54% call with the Jack 8 of hearts, 53% call with the Jack 8 of clubs. So I hope this gives you guys an idea on how wide you need to call in the spot. I don't want you guys to be making the mistake of overfolding here, because overfolding is never a good thing, at least not on early streets. Okay, so on flop and turn, we do not want to be overfolding, and here you see that you need to call with a lot of those hands. So let's start with some frequency heuristics for some hand classes you're going to have in your range. In particular, let's start with the ace high region. So I filtered for ace high here, and I'm going to start taking a look at ace high good kicker, right? Ace high good kicker, you almost can't fold to that small bet, only 16% fold. So you can play it as a 80-20. Okay, so 80% bucket, you put it 80% of the time in the calling range. Okay, so you're gonna have quite a lot of calls here. These ones I imagine you guys have an easier time making, but if you're one of the odd ones, the nits who are not making these calls, well, now you know that they're supposed to be making them at least 84% of the time here. Okay, ace jack here on queen 4-3-7. Take a look at that. Ace queen on the 4 to straight run out. Ace jack on queen 5 deuce 6. Ace queen on a low board 8 5 deuce 7. You have to call there. Ace jack 7-4-3-5. Ace queen, ooh, that's a tough one. Ace queen on jack 7-3-6. Like, take a look at this one. Jack 7 3 think it's like this, right? Jack 7-3. Yeah, Jack 7-3, 6 of diamonds. 6 of diamonds. The guy bets small. Ace queen off. It's a pure call. Ace queen off, pure call, even without the diamond here. Really sick stuff. A bunch of, well, yeah, it's ace queen. The cutting point is ace queen. Some ace 9 suited calling there. Really, really sick stuff. Right? So this is what you're supposed to be doing here. Ace high, high kicker. You're basically not folding 80-20 bucket. You can put it right there against a small size, right? Let's actually take some notes out of this. So hand class frequency heuristics versus the 30% sizing. Ace high, high kicker, basically 80% bucket in terms of calls. Okay, so I'm talking about calls. So let's take a look at medium kicker, ace 10 through ace 8. Wow, it doesn't change much. So ace high medium kicker follows the same bucket, okay, 80% calling bucket. And then ace high low kicker, I would expect less calls, but let's see. We might be surprised. We might be surprised. Okay, so ace high low kicker is now completely the opposite. It's now only the 20% calling bucket. Okay, so first heuristics we have here is that with ace high, high kicker or medium kicker, if you have a kicker of 8 or higher, ace 8 or higher, you're basically not supposed to fold much. 80-20 split. Okay, let's continue with our exploration of different hand classes. We can talk about now the king high's high kicker, right? King high, high kicker. So king high, no draw. I don't want to be any draw here. So king high, high kicker facing a probe here. How often is it that we should call a fold? Let's start with king, queen, and king, jack. So king high, high kicker facing a small bet on the turn. Take a look at that. 69 31. Okay, guys, so this is 60% bucket, guys. 60% bucket for our king, queen, king, jack. This is really significant. We need to continue 60% of the time with our king, queen, king, jack. If we split king, queen from king, jack, let's see. There's a difference. There's a difference. 72-28 for king, queen. So king, queen can be in the 80% bucket. King, queen is only folding 28, so you can approximate that to the 80% call, 20% fold. King jack, on the other hand, is 65-35, so king jack goes to the 60% bucket. Okay, so if you want to be super precise, which you don't have to, you could say just like king, queen, king jack, 80% bucket, but king, queen goes into the 80% bucket. Oops, sorry. King, queen goes into the 80% bucket. King, jack goes into the 60% bucket. But guys, you have to call quite a lot with those hands. Of course, these are mixed strategies, but if you fold those, you're going to be overfolding by a huge amount because those are a significant portion of your checking range, and those have a lot of offsuit combinations, right? So king, queen here on a 10 high board, you have to call. King, jack on another 10 high board, you have to continue 60% of the time. King, queen against a small size, another 10 high board. King, jack on 5-3 deuce 8, you have to continue 60% is our bucket here. 8-4-3-9, 2 overs there, you have to continue with your king high. On ace high boards, going to have to continue pretty much always with your king highs. 8-5 deuce 10 with against a small size, we're calling with our king high. 8-4-3-6, we're calling with our king high. 5-3 deuce 10, we're calling with our king high. So quite a lot of calling with our king highs, and well, we have to call super often there, right? So moving on from the king highs, well, let's take a look quickly at the king highs medium kickers, because it might be that we also have to call with those. So it's a 50% bucket. So king 9 ace high board, king 10 on a fortress straight here, 6-4 6-5-3-4, we're calling king 10. King 10 on 7, 4, 3, 8. 50% bucket, guys. 50% bucket for your king highs facing a small bet. King 10 of spades on jack 3 deuce 6. King 9 off on 7, 5, 4, 3. You just have to call your king highs there. Okay, so 50% bucket. Let me take a look at what changes when the board is ace high, because I think that when the board is ace high, we are not going to fold much. Yeah, so when the board is ace high, you can't fold your king highs. Okay, so basically, you can't fold your king highs when the board is ace high, or maybe you can put it into the 80-20 bucket. So 80-20 bucket for the ace high boards, and then on the non-ace high boards, unfortunately can't filter for not ace high boards for some reason. But anyways, we have to continue about 60% of the time with our king highs on the turn. Let's take a look now at a worse region. Let's take a look at queen highs and jack highs. Queen highs and jack highs, what do we do with those on the turn? So we're going to ungroup this, and we're going to say that on the turn, we have queen high. Let's separate that. Let's separate that. Let's separate queen high. Queen high, no draw. How is it that we should play? And let's first take a look at the strongest queen highs, queen jack and queen 10. Okay, so we're 20-80. So queen high, high kicker, we're gonna put it into the 20% bucket for calling. Okay, so we're calling a little bit over queen highs there. So queen 10 on 5-3 deuce 7, queen jack on 9-3 deuce 6, queen jack on 8-8-4 king, queen 10 on 3 deuce jack, queen jack on 7-4-3 5, queen 10 on 7-3 deuce 4, queen 10 on 6-5-3 6, queen 10 of hearts on 7-7 deuce 5. Really, really sick stuff. 7-7 deuce 5. Let's take a look at this one. 7-7 deuce 5. The guy bets small. Take a look. Queen 10 of hearts. Queen 10 of hearts, 65% call. Jack 10 of hearts, 36% call. So really, really sick stuff. Really, really, really sick stuff. You should be putting your queen highs on a global 20% bucket. And surely some board textures you're gonna call more than others, right? So if we filter for specifically low boards, 76. If we filter for high boards, pure fold. Yeah, so basically we're calling on the low boards. On the low boards, we're gonna be calling with those queen highs. And lastly, let's take a look at some of those other hands that we saw on our filters, stuff like these jack highs, right? These jack highs, these hands that are super weird. Basically want those hands when they don't have a draw and obviously not a pair as well. Okay, so we're calling 20% all the time. We're continuing 20% of the time. We put it in the 20% bucket. So the 9-8, the jack 10. All right, cool. So we're gonna put it in the 20% bucket as well. Other airs, 20% bucket. Really, really sick stuff. Of course, there is some heuristic here that is super precise in order to figure this out, because you're not gonna call 20% of all of your airs in any spot where villain bets small, right? So don't take this heuristic at face value, let's put it that way, because you're not gonna call 20% of your airs on all spots, right? But here we're calling a decent amount, and there are gonna be specific circumstances where this makes sense. But so far, I hope you guys have gotten a lot of insight from this, because you can't fold your ace highs, medium kicker plus 80% bucket, ace high low kicker, you're gonna even continue 20% of the time, king queen king jack, you're gonna continue most of the time, the medium kicker is gonna continue half the time, and then you're gonna have some air. You're gonna have to call a little bit of your air against that small bet size. Awesome. So now let's take a look at how to defend against the 2/3 size, which is the one that you're going to face quite a lot in game. So let's take a look at when villain bets 2/3 bet size. So overall, we don't have a draw with fold 45, but we're interested here in specific hand classes. So let's imagine we have ace high kicker. We remain continuing 60% of the time with our ace highs good kickers against the 2/3 bet sizing. What about ace high low kicker in those spots against the 2/3 sizing? I would imagine now we're not going to continue much. Ace deuce through ace 7. Yeah, so pure folding the ace highs low kickers. And we have the ace highs medium kickers, which are probably in between maybe the 40, maybe the 20% bucket. Let's check it. Let's check those ace highs medium kickers. 50-50 split with the ace highs medium kickers. So 50% bucket for those. So even against a 2/3 bet sizing, we're still calling half the time with our ace highs medium kickers. Take a look at that. Queen 6-6 deuce, you have to call ace 9. Queen 5 deuce deuce, you have to call half the time with your ace 9. Queen 4-3-3, you have to call ace 10. A lot of pairing renouns we're facing here. 7-4-3-5, ace 9 are gonna call, ace 8 on the double paired, ace 10 on the pairing low board, fortress straight. A lot of calls on the fortress straight renouns. Call 8-4-3-3, call 9-5-5-4 against 2/3. We're gonna call ace 9. We're gonna call. So about half the time, we're gonna call those ace highs medium kickers. Let's take a look at the king, queen, king, jack combinations. Probably here, I would say we're gonna have low frequency at best. Let's take a look. So 20% call, 80% fold with those king highs. We're still calling a little bit, but mostly folding. And we can see that the calls come mostly from the pairing renouns. So pairing renouns or paired boards. Pairing renouns or paired boards is where we're going to be calling those king highs. Okay, so pay attention to that. On those pairing boards, we're going to be calling with our king highs. 20% bucket for our king, queen, king, jack type hands. Really sick stuff. I would imagine the medium kicker king highs are not going to do much. No, still 20% calls with those as well. Gotta beat those pairing renouns, right? Gotta beat those. King 10 off on 5-3 deuce 7. King 10. Wow, 6-3 deuce 4. That's wild. 6-3 deuce. 6-3 deuce 4. We need those airs to bluff rivers, am I right? We need those airs to bluff rivers. Take a look at that. What was the suit? King of heart, 10 of clubs. King of heart, 10 of clubs, 10% call. Pretty sick. So we're putting these pretty much all king highs. King highs from king 8 all the way up to king queen. We're putting them into the 20% bucket, floating against those 2/3 bets. Really, really sick stuff. You see how much calling it is required for you to be balanced, for you to not overfold. This is the biggest gain of studying TTO strategies. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You see what really takes to be balanced in this game. No one really does that, right? No one really does that. And if you can do it, you're going to develop an edge. Cool. So against this bet sizing, we covered ace highs, we covered king queen. Let's take a look at low pairs and low pockets as well, because those might be counterintuitive sometimes. So let's filter for low pairs and low pockets. So low pairs and low pockets, they are basically using a 50-50 split. So low pairs, low pockets against a 2/3 bet sizing, they are doing a 50-50 split. Okay, so this is important for you guys to know. You have to continue with those low pairs and low pockets against the 2/3 size. So ace-6 here, the fourth pair, ace-8, so the bottom pair on the fortress straight, you're still calling here. 10-6 here is very easy to see that you should call. King-8, yeah, let's isolate them because low pair, I think you're not gonna fold much. Yeah, we're folding about 40%. No, a bit less. 26 out of 82. That's 32%. So 32% fold. Yeah, we can put it into the 60-40. So low pairs are calling 60% of the time. What about the low pockets? The low pockets are probably going to call less, I would imagine. Low pockets. Low pockets, same stuff. Low pockets are calling about 40% of the time. A little bit less, but you can round that to the 40%. Low pockets here. Yeah, I wouldn't fold 8-4-3. 5's on 8-4-3. So let's see, 8-4-3. 3 of spades. Yeah, this is just a pure call. Pocket 2s you can start randomizing. So let's see some of the folds. Some of the folds that they're making here. Yeah, it's got to be mostly on runouts where they're pretty dead. Right, runouts where they're pretty dead. So runouts where they're pretty dead. They're going to fold runouts where they can still have a lot of equity against the betting range. They're going to continue. So this is, of course, very dependent on the board texture. I just want you guys to have some general ideas here with regards to how often you need to continue globally with those hand classes. I think from now we can just move on to the bigger bet size. Now let's take a look at what are the thresholds against the 1.2x. The 1.2x over bet from our opponent. What are the thresholds against that size? Let's see if ace highs, we can do it. So on the turn, we need ace high and not a draw. And let's filter for the high kickers. Yeah, we're calling 20% of the time against overbet. 20% of the time against overbet. 10-6-3-6. The guy bombs, we call. 10-6-3-6. He bombs, we call. 8-6 deuce 3. He bombs, we call. 7-7 deuce 3. He bombs, we call. So mostly low paired runouts. Low paired runouts. We're calling quite a lot of those. 6-6 deuce 8. Let's take a look. 6-6 deuce. 6-6 deuce 8. No, it's a two-tone one. 6-6 deuce 8. 8 of clubs. 1.2. Yeah, we're calling a lot. We're calling a lot on those low pair boards with these ace high kickers. We can't really fold them much at all. Let's take a look at low pockets and low pairs because those are going to be difficult to play for sure in those spots. I think low pairs are going to call more than low pockets. So we're folding 60%, calling 40. So low pair. So against 1.2x size, if you have low pair, you're still supposed to call 60% of the time against the 1.2x overbet. I'm sorry, 40% of the time. 40% bucket. 40% bucket you should be calling. A7, wow, that's wild. A7 on mono king high board, turn comes a queen, A7 on king, jack 7, 3, Ace 3 on Jack 7 3 Jack, Jack 5 on 8 5 deuce deuce, King deuce on 8 6 deuce 3, Queen 4 on Queen 4 3 6, Ace 4 on Jack 10 4 6. So we need to call still a decent amount of your low pairs. And lastly, low pockets. The low pockets are calling about 1/6 of the time, 20% bucket for the low pockets. We have pocket 8s calling here against 1.2x a little bit. Pocket 9s calling here on Queen Jack 4. Pocket 2s on 8 4 3 8. Wow, pocket 8s on Ace 10 5. That's probably one of the most difficult we have seen. Pocket 3s, Jack 5 5 4. Pocket 8s on Jack 9 4 4. So about 20% calls with those low pockets in this situation. We covered quite a lot in this video. There's still a lot more to cover in this line here because there are so many potential board combinations, board runouts, that it would be impossible to cover everything. I will be covering this more and more in the weekly dose of Green Line in the community, so watch out for those doses, right? This is it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.